Hello, believers, non-believers, and everyone in between. You're listening to Stories with Sapphire. I am Sapphire Sandalo. Now get cozy and open your mind because it's story time. Little Man from the Woods, submitted by Lennon. My name is Lennon. I'm 25, and I've always been sensitive to paranormal entities. I have countless stories from the houses I grew up in that range from benign, smells, sounds, touching, to scary, things being thrown across rooms, angry stomping. I am a Latvian pagan, although I'm not as actively religious as I would like to be. 2025 goals, I suppose. My Oma and Opa, grandparents, were both followers of Div Turiba, which is a modern rekindling of ancient Latvian folklore. And at least one of my more distant relatives was a practicing witch and apothecary in her town in Latvia. I can say with some degree of confidence that my sensitivities to other realms is an inherited gift. While there were several characters not of this realm I grew up with, the one I want to focus on is an entity my family calls Little Man from the Woods. This guy has been with my family since my mom was a kid, but I imagine he's been around a lot longer. The name I know him by is an English translation to what my Oma called him in Latvian. The translation is pretty literal, although a more direct one would be something along the lines of Little Woodland God. Little Man from the Woods is a mischievous creature whose hallmark is hiding things for however long pleases him before depositing them somewhere either completely obvious or completely random, usually sometime after you've given up on ever seeing the item again. Some highlights of his include a pair of kitchen scissors that went missing for ages and were found under a mattress while cleaning. And my favorite necklace disappearing for weeks that turned up after tearing the house apart, hanging on a doorknob. He really liked that necklace, actually, and he hid it many times over the years. Maybe because it had a Celtic symbol on it, I don't know. Most recently, he got my spouse and I by hiding a charging block for weeks before depositing it in the living room in a spot we had checked several times. And the other day, he stole my mother's meat tenderizer. The return on that one is still pending. Little Man has not shown himself to anybody except one person, my very drunk and abusive father. Like I said, my mom also grew up with Little Man, and nobody had ever seen him. The night he showed himself to my dad was on a night where he was drunk and belligerent. I was about 5 or 6. My dad was yapping on about whatever his train of thought was, when suddenly he fell silent and sat down at the top of the stairs, going down from the living room into the entryway. He, without looking away from the front door, whispered at me in a rather mystified voice to come and see. It's Little Man from the Woods, standing right by the front door. This sudden change in demeanor freaked me right out, so I was too scared to look. I asked him, "What does Little Man look like?" But he wouldn't say. He just kept quietly ushering me to come and see. Eventually, I guess Little Man got bored and left. My dad got up, and it was business as usual. But now that I'm older and have thought about his encounter, it seems so in character for Little Man. His whole thing is mischief and messing with people. So, of course, the one person he'd show himself to is the one person nobody would ever take seriously. Nobody has seen him since, although my dad talked about Little Man while he was dying and delirious, which I think is interesting since he's not the one who grew up with him. I do wonder what little man looked like, though. I'm not certain what exactly little man is, but I know he's a pretty chill guy. He likes a little fun, and honestly, I respect that, even if he hides things that are really inconvenient sometimes. I hope he sticks around for a long time. I don't think the vibes would be the same without him. I also hope he greeted my dad on the other side, and they had a laugh about that night. Anyway, sorry about the Latvian words that are difficult to pronounce. I also have trouble with them if it's any consolation. Cheers, friend, and thanks for the awesome podcast. So, first and foremost, my deepest apologies for butchering all of the Latvian words. So, little man from the woods sounds very similar to a duende. They also like to steal things. They're also very playful. It's more of like a trickster type energy, not necessarily something malicious. In Ireland, they'd be called leprechauns. My mom's family had an experience with little people in Hawaii. They had several things happen, but my favorite was when my Tito was really little and he disappeared for hours. And when he showed up back at the house and his family was like, "Where were you?" And he said, "Oh, I was playing with the little people." So I personally have no doubt that these entities are real. I've heard way too many stories not to believe it at this point. But they're just called something different depending on where you are around the world, but it's the very same energy. I feel like these types of spirits are here to remind us to not take life so seriously. So they move things around to get a reaction out of us. Life is inconvenient sometimes. And maybe that's why he showed up to your dad. Maybe he was trying to just interrupt your dad's patterns. Just really abruptly be like, "Hey, you need to chill, you need to change." And, whether or not it actually worked, it does seem like your dad was very much affected by him. So, in a way, little man is sort of like a little guardian for you guys, too.